Steve Cook for CMO.com by Adobe. We're at the CLIC 15 conference in McLean, Virginia, and Stuart Foster, who's the Vice President of Marketing at the Hilton Hotel Group, just gave an incredible presentation on how he is developing new hotel concepts. Stuart, that was fantastic.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for being
here. Nice being here. Appreciate that.
So tell us about your marketing journey. Where have you been?
I've been with, unusually, only with 3 companies in my lifetime. I started my career at L'Oreal. I learned great classic CPG marketing through them in the early 90s. I worked on hair color, styling products, skincare, but developed, as it was a French company, it is a French company, developed a desire for the international aspect of it, for the globality of the business, and was recruited from there to work in the LVMH group, where I looked after their champagne brand, particularly Moet and Chandon. Joined them in the US, worked with them in Japan, worked with them globally out of the Paris office, came back to the US, and in the last 4 years I joined Hilton Worldwide, and I've been stewarding the luxury and now lifestyle brands there, applying really what I learned across cosmetics and champagne now to the hospitality sector.
Well, it's interesting because I spent about 10 years working on personal care brands at Procter & Gamble. CoverGirl, Noxium, and Max Factor, and so you've...
2 guys who selling
there
cosmetics to young women.
It always amazes people. You've been looking at consumers' mindsets even before you really started to think about the shift from demographics to mindsets, because a lot of what the businesses that you worked on are all about is catering to the mindset of somebody who's using a hair care product.
They used to call it image brands. And image was kind of a fluffy term for a premium brand. And I think you're exactly right. I think at the time we didn't use the term mindset, which we're now making almost a standardized term in marketing. But we were going after a mindset of why would you pay more for a cosmetic? Why would you spend $40, $50 on a bottle of champagne that you're going to enjoy right then? Is because we were going after a mindset. It was a lifestyle.
A great example, which everybody knows, men and women, I'm worth it at L'Oreal. That is a positioning and a tagline around a mindset. I'm worth it. I'm worth paying a little bit more.
Exactly.
I am definitely worth it. So, coming to the hotel industry and working on luxury brands, how has your prior marketing impacted impacted how you've been approaching developing new opportunities?
Well, I think it's exactly that. I think from day one, I've been focusing on what is the mindset that Waldorf Astoria should be catering to. What is the mindset that differentiates Conrad from a Waldorf Astoria? And some of the work we're now doing, we're crystallizing that concretely in terms and phrases and brand architectures. But one of the things I really learned, I think LVMH does it really well because they happen to have very old brands. Moet and Chandon was over 250 years old when I worked on it, is you have to understand the DNA of a brand. And it's like a person. You can dress a person up. I can dress you as you are today. I could put you in a mod suit that's made of leather. It doesn't change who you...
Please don't do that.
It won't change who you are as a person, but it'll change how you project yourself. And if we put you in a mod leather suit, it probably would be a disconnect to who you are as a person. So you can't dress up an old brand in a new way just to be new. And I think protecting that heritage and understanding your brand's DNA is something LVMH taught me very well, that I spent the first early few months at Hilton understanding that Waldorf Astoria history. And it has an amazing, Waldorf Astoria, by the way, as a name, it's a 9-year-old brand, being more than one hotel, but the brand itself has been around for 110 years, since 1893. And so there's a lot that is associated with that. There's a lot, everyone has a story about Waldorf Astoria. And so understanding what that motivation was and what really made people tick is what got me to that mindset that everyone has a story about how they felt rich in life when they were either in the Waldorf Astoria or their parents' honeymoon there. All those old stories, how do you take that and create a rich in life story that is relevant for today and going forward for where the brand is going?
So at Hilton, you're doing that with established brands. You're mining the DNA and you're contemporizing them and making it relevant for today's audience. But you're doing a lot of innovative things, developing new brands. How do you create DNA from white space? That human being, so to speak, never existed before, but you see a hole and an opportunity at a marketplace. Tell us how you've been approaching that opportunity.
Yeah, you have to be very disciplined. I think the biggest danger is what I call the I think space. And you have a lot of industry experts, veterans, people with incredible experience who start a lot of conversations with the two most dangerous words, I think. And you run the danger of having a management-led or a personally led agenda in creating something. We avoided that by making this entirely based on what does the consumer want. And we peeled it all the way back to the hotel experience, which hasn't changed dramatically in 100 years. You still go to a counter, you still almost sign the registration card when you hand over your credit card and your driver's license, and it hasn't really innovated. And when you look at hospitality, it really is a series of potential disappointments. Most hotel stays are when people are afraid, and they will tend to pay more to avoid those disappointments. But they're always afraid that what's going to be wrong? Is it going to be what kind of room I get? Is it going to be that I face the parking lot? Is it going to be that it smells like smoke? Or that they don't have the right things in the minibar? Or that the menu isn't the right? Or the breakfast is too expensive? There are all these pain points. And so what we peeled back is if we could start with a very fresh, forward thinking, what space would it occupy? So we had to map the competition, and we did so based on scale. We mapped them on price. We mapped them on what mindsets they were going after. And we identified a huge hole in the lifestyle space where no one at scale had developed a lifestyle concept that was replicable at a business model that was going to be advantageous to developers and owners.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because we don't have the luxury of your presentation behind us, but you were showing us how the boutique hotel industry emerged, and then everybody jumped into it, but there were really no big scaled concepts.
Well, they were, when you look at the launch of it, and I think W probably did it the best, they went after a mindset that a hotel is not just a place to stay. It's a place for me to temporarily be somebody else and be cool and go to the bar. But they focused very heavily on design, and they focused very heavily on the public spaces, and the rooms were an afterthought. And so when we did our research, we found that the room is very important and can't be an afterthought. And in fact, I think times have changed since 1997, where maybe that I want to be somebody else and be transformed is no longer a unique proposition. It's out there in many different forms. So how do we create something that's unique? And so we started from scratch, from the room, from the way someone checks in. Will be the first hotel that will be straight to room. You can use your phone to open the key lock. So we're essentially eliminating that whole front desk pain point. The room has the perfect sleep environment. It wasn't the most tricked out room with buttons to close your windows and all kinds of fancy bells and whistles. It was what people need in a hotel room, which was a great sleep environment. So we focused on the sleep, a great bed, the soundproofing, the materials that make a great sleeping environment. And then there are other things that we innovated. We completely re-innovated the closet and created something we call uncloseted that blows the doors off a closet and gives you everything you need, but you don't have that compartmentalization. Filtered water, all these things were innovating the room, but then we went beyond that and we innovated the common space. So we have a transfer refuge where you can go before your room is ready or after you check out to shower, change, check luggage, hang out. We took a common space that evolves from coffee shop to lunch place to bar to dinner. We brought in thoughtful extras. We're doing free tastings in the evening. We're doing local gifts. We're partnering with local fitness and art people so that the hotel becomes part of the neighborhood and the neighborhood becomes part of the hotel. All these things were based on looking at the consumer mindsets that we identified that people associate themselves with, whether they're kind of a modern business traveler or they're a cultured vacationer or they're what we call a room-centric, or they're all about the room. People are in these mindsets. They might be in different ones at different times. And how do we build a concept that resonates with different mindsets and different parts of the experience might resonate? And so we started with 10 concepts. We found out what resonated with different mindsets. We then distilled it down to 4 concepts. And we ultimately took the best of the 4 and put them together into one concept. It's research. It's consumer-based research. Over 40,000 data points eliminates the I think conversation with our CEO.
So the concept that you developed was Canopy. And this disciplined process that you worked with did not use demographics. You mapped out different mindsets, as you were saying, different types of people that go to hotels, irregardless of their age. It was how they thought about their hotel experience and their travel. Why do you think, not just the hospitality industry, but why should other CMO peers be thinking about moving from demographics to mindsets? Why are we in that age?
Well, I think the millennials have taught us one thing very powerfully, that what's called a lifestyle brand is not just a clothing brand or a trendy hotel brand. A lifestyle brand is one that enhances my lifestyle, essentially meaning it's part of my mindset. My mindset is I approach the world this way. And if a brand can facilitate that, help that, make it better, easier, faster, stronger, then that brand is in me. It all of a sudden becomes part of my lifestyle. Apple has taught us that, right? The Apple phone, no offense to the people in Cupertino, is not the best phone. Never was. It's obviously a lot better today. But it wasn't about it being a phone. It was about it becoming a device that became useful, that allows me to do other things. And now all of us have one, and they keep coming out with bigger and better versions of that. So it's not about the phone, it's not about the computer, it's not about, we had someone here today who was in the pipe business. He has to go after the mindset, and that might be the frustrated building owner who has crumbling pipes, but there's a mindset there of, I don't know what to do, I need someone trusted to go to. Every product service should be thinking about what's the mindset of the person I'm selling to, because it helps you focus your target. We have a demographically defined target within our hotels, and we can do it by income and age. But the problem is, I want to get to the people that can really resonate with my brand. And the only way to differentiate your brand versus another, in my case, another hotel brand, is to go after a mindset and say, Waldorf is going after that rich in life mindset. Canopy by Hilton is going after that fresh forward mindset. It's not going after the flash, big daddy, I want to show off. Those are two different mindsets, and that's why we have two different brands. Hilton has 12 brands, and that's what I'm helping them do now, is figure out what are the different mindsets that each brand can focus on. And there are times when your kids may have a soccer game in Scranton, and you're going to have a different mindset than when you take your wife on a 3-day getaway with just the two of you for your anniversary. And that's why we have Waldorf Astoria, and it's also why we have a Hampton Inn.
I would add to mindset, experience, and the experience economy. We're all living that. Your research actually validated this. People are willing to pay more.
Yes.
They're willing to pay more for value as opposed to just deal. One of the other things that was very impressive about your process is you certainly used quantitative research. You had big data.
Yes.
You had to validate, especially for skeptics internally or industry veterans that thought they knew everything about the industry, and I believe.
Yes.
What impressed me was that you combined art and science.
Right.
You balanced that. You had designers, you had architects, you had a wonderful agency, Creative Minds, on the bus with you during this journey. Tell us a little bit more about how you approached that, how you balanced it, and how you're preserving it today so that the operational part of the business doesn't strip away part of the DNA.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that definition of innovation, right? So in this case, with Canopy by Hilton, we wanted to create a higher, new desired state of a hotel stay, to break away from all those pain points of a disappointing stay. So that was the objective. But remember, the definition of innovation is applied creativity. And one thing LVMH taught me very well is the fusing of creativity and the application of that towards innovation. And so the creative aspect, you can't just have the data and say we're going to, through the data, find a better sleep environment. You have to find a creative solution and then validate it through the data. So creativity is definitely that piece, and the application of it is where the data comes in. So I think having a creative agency, having a great designer, we have an interior designer who's helped us with the look and feel of the room, but it was built on the research. When we went back to the research and said, these types of mindsets are looking for these types of experiences in the room. They want a place to store everything, but they don't use the closet. Scratch your head. Well, what does that mean? You then get an interior designer who says, what if I blew the doors off the closet and I give you the shelves and the hanging pole, and I give you the safe and the place for your shoes. I give you everything, a perfect place for everything, but I do it in a different way. That's how that interaction, and it isn't one always comes before the other. I think you have to start with one. You have to start with a consumer insight, which our consumer insight was the continued disappointment of hotel stays. And then you start peeling that onion back until you can start finding opportunities to be creative and apply them and then validate them through science.
I want to see if I can make you smile here. You were very fortunate to have an interior designer and agency creatives that didn't approach this with their I believe solutions. They listened to the research, they interpreted it, they were creative. I mean, did you ever have any interesting conversations around, I believe it should have this, but there was no research to support it?
It's actually funny. I now count with a little check mark on papers the number of times I hear people start in meetings their conversation with I think. When I'm in discussions outside of the team that's worked on Canopy, it's still incredibly high. And I think it was fun to watch the agencies. You would have a creative director or an account director or my boss start saying, well, I think, and then all of a sudden everyone would kind of giggle and it would say, okay, the research said X. Right. Now let's take the conversation that way. And it just forced you to do that. Right. And so, yeah, you have to have that discipline. I see it happen very often now with the I think. And I think if you're research-based, you can apply the creativity.
I love it. And I would imagine the I think syndrome is especially true in industries where people have spent their entire careers, they've been successful, they've done it all, but there's always new ground to capture. You just need to be open to it.
Absolutely.
So let's finish with what are some other things that you've experienced in the hospitality industry that you think are applicable to our CMO.com readers, things they need to be thinking about?
You know, I think this new idea that mindsets really are the way you need to think about when you peel it back. And I told the group today, if you can't articulate the mindset, you're not there yet. And quite often, the word target is used. Who do we want to target? Who do we want our customers to be? Is a big danger, I think, in any industry. If you're selling pipe replacement or you're selling Apple or you're selling a software technology, what is the mindset you're going after? Because if you even though some businesses are definitely more product driven and some are more experience driven, and in the luxury hotel space we're extremely experience driven. People always ask me, how do I move from champagne to hospitality? I said, it's exactly the same business. I was not selling fermented grape juice in a glass bottle with a paper label and a foil cap. I was selling a party about to happen. As soon as you heard that cork pop out, that meant the party started. The same way, I'm selling at Waldorf Astoria, for instance, that arrival. I have that same experience, and the moment you walk into the lobby and you say, so regardless of the industry you're in, I think mindsets are incredibly important. You then have to go back and you still buy media with demographics, but it's more than demographics. You're buying the mindset. There are data points that define the mindset, and you'll start to throw some of them out. I think a 45-year-old businesswoman from St. Louis visiting New York has a lot more in common with a 22-year-old millennial who lives in New York than you realize. Because when she's there, when that St. Louis woman is there for 2 or 3 days, she has a very similar mindset to that millennial. If I'm saying that I want to target women 35 plus, I'm going to miss the millennial. Or I may say, I want to target people who think like the millennial. I'm going to miss the woman from St. Louis if I'm only going after age. So you'll start to discount things like age and income bracket and zip code. And you'll start, the beauty of data today is that we have tons of data. It's how you use it. We were talking about how scary, how creepy is data, right? How creepy is direct mail, direct response. I don't think it's creepy at all if it's relevant. And if you use the data correctly and you present a relevant concept to the right mindset person, they will respond to it.
Consumers will actually appreciate it.
Exactly.
It's interesting, when I was at Coca-Cola, we always used to talk about, certainly the beverage has to taste good and be, it has to fulfill whatever the functional or nutritional benefits are, but the extrinsics, what's outside the bottle, the experience of sharing a Coke was even more important, and that's what the brand stood for, happiness. So Stuart Foster, Hilton Group, thank you so much.
Steve. Appreciate your
Steve
time.
Cook, Adobe, CMO.com at the CLIC 2015 conference.